Commissioners, I'm the mayor. Want to thank you for your patience with the project and assure you that it is nearing substantial completion. And that's one of the things that you're here, obviously, to hear about today is what to expect. We really are trying hard to get out information in response to some questions we've been getting. So we, the city, and I'll introduce people in a moment, we jointly drafted a letter with Columbus, who is the water system operator, and it was delivered hopefully to your homes on Monday. I haven't received any notice that people didn't get it. So I think you got a letter Monday with some information about flushing and other information about lead and water. We wanted to do this to follow up on that and make sure everybody got their questions answered, that we realized that there's a lot of information here. And so we've asked the City of Columbus, our partner, to be here. We are getting questions about water particularly, and I'll introduce Emily Eskridge from the City of Columbus is here. Next to her, Daryl Hughes, Service Director for City of Grandview Heights. Brian Saunders, Project Engineer for the City Engineer for City of Grandview Heights, and Matt Ferris, City Engineer in the front row here for the City of Grandview Heights. Let's see here. So we want to provide for you an update, an overview of what's happened, and maybe some explanations of why it's, there's assumptions it's taking a really long time, the complexity of it, as well as get your questions answered and get some information about regulations and what to expect in the future and how those might be changing. There's a lot to talk about. If we can advance to the next slide. I'll just give you a little overview here, and then I'll turn it over to the project and the technical people to provide more. This is a major project for us. It's a $3.7 million investment in our community to modernize a lot of infrastructure under the ground, as well as do paving and the things you see above the ground. That infrastructure under there we're a 100-year-old community, and a lot of it's never been touched since it was installed. And to give you some context, a water line has a 50-year design life, and a lot of our water lines are 80 years old or more. It's not only water, it's sewer, in sanitary and storm, and a complete street reconstruction, which involves all those things. So we're upgrading those lines, we're modernizing them. The sanitary relief sewer is something that you may not be aware of, but we maybe thought it would get a little more attention than it did, but it's actually an enhancement to the project that we added with our own funding. This was a grant loan combination from the Ohio Public Works Commission. We added more funding to get the sanitary relief sewer. And understand, these are complicated matters. Columbus, we're all tied to one big system. Water, sewer, all those things are tied together. We're kind of in the middle of it, where we sit in the region. Columbus is doing some major sewer improvements. If you've been over to Olentangy River Road lately, you've seen the big project that they have had going on for several years now. That's part of it. Another part of it will be on 3rd Avenue, and it will be an enhancement of capacity. That will benefit our residents if we can provide the relief sewer on our side. So we are adding things strategically to get you more benefit out of this project, so we don't have to come in and do it again. In this project is, as you know, removal of publicly owned lead service lines and replacement with copper. Lead service line abatement is something we've been doing since at least 2000. I've asked our engineers and our service director to speak a little more to that, but we do have a program in place. Quite frankly, there's lead all over the community because of our age, and it's that way in Central Ohio. It's a lot of cities in this region. That is really the norm for a community of this age. Columbus can speak a little more, and I know you have questions about risk and safety. They can speak a little more about how that's mitigated and why the water is safe nonetheless. And then the final point I just wanted to make is that this is a joint project because it involves all these utilities. We don't do our own utilities in Grandview Heights. We are a contract agency, if you will, with the City of Columbus. We have a contract for water. We partner with them on any project like this. Their utilities department reviews design and approves things, and we're in constant contact during key phases of the project where water comes off and on, et cetera. I will go ahead and turn this over for more technical details to our engineering team, if you can advance the slide, and I don't know who will want to speak to this, but Sarah, if you could.
Yeah, I'll just kind of kick it off. So, I mean, you guys have been living in the city, you've seen the construction underway. We first kind of started with the sanitary sewer. We installed that from Willard down to Oxley, moving into the water line, and then the storm sewer also. We've installed the main lines, water line and the services up to the curb stops. The chlorination was completed last week or this week. So we will be starting next week on transferring all the services over to the new line. And then once that's completed, we'll be abandoning the old line in place. And there's a couple storm structures that are in conflict with that old line. So once that old line is abandoned in place, we'll be able to take out those pieces to where we can finish up the storm sewer and therefore finish up the curb and continue into the sidewalk on the south side. So things are moving along, and it's we're getting towards the end of the project. It might not look that way. Kind of the last components like the paving and stuff happened pretty quick, within a couple days. So you know, we're anticipating that you know, the final substantial portions of this project are going to be happening in about the next month. There'll still be, come spring, some seeding and some repairs like that'll happen this following spring. But our goal is to try and get the project to where it's substantially complete by before the end of this year. So.
The one thing that's going to lag a little bit is the street lights, ordering any type of poles and street light things are taking a long time to get these days. So they're on order. We got existing lights that are going to stay in place, and then once the new lights come in, we'll get those switched out with the new street lights.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen at a later date. I don't know exactly yet.
So we wanted to provide kind of this picture, just kind of clear up any confusion as to what we're talking about, and so you can kind of visually understand what the water service looks like. As you can see, the water main, which has been already installed, the existing services to the curb stop, which is in the middle there, a lot of them were lead, not all of them, some of them were. We've been documenting that as we've been encountering it. The new ones are copper, they're installed. And come Monday, we'll be transferring over that last portion into your existing service that's privately owned on the customer side.
We say Monday. We're going to start doing it Monday.
Start doing it
It's going to take 2 to 3 days.
A couple days, at least 3 days probably.
Could you go back to the other side and just take a minute to, I can't read any of the type. So the utility owned in the blue is the street, right?
The light color.
Okay, so that light colored circle is actually pipe.
Yes.
So this is kind of demonstrating what where the water main is underneath the road. And then you have, this is what the city owns, is this portion up to here, which this is generally in the tree lawn on First Avenue. So this where you see like the valve boxes, that's the curb stop. So this is new water line, new service up to the curb stop. There's a new service that's been put in, and then you can see the little pieces of copper that have been turned up. Those will be tied into your existing service, your existing line that goes into your home.
Okay, thank you.
As the mayor said, that the all public owned lead services, are being replaced on this portion of the project. It aligns with capital projects. So typically we do these anytime we do a water line replacement throughout the city, which we have done since about 2000. Any water line replacements, anytime we get into a lead line, we replace them. So we've had this process of replacing lead lines for some time. Since 2000, we've already did 300 plus of these where we replace lead to remove those. So removals will continue as this project's completed, and as you'll see, as things get hooked up next week, then the old stuff will be abandoned, and you'll be on a new line. Anytime we design one of these water line projects for any of the work around town, it requires City of Columbus approval. So City of Columbus reviews those plans to make sure they're all in compliance, and Columbus helps ensure that we're EPA compliant too. So they are our water provider.
So I'll talk a little bit about this slide as the City of Columbus. I'm the Regulatory Compliance Manager for the Division of Water for the City of Columbus. I oversee our lead and copper program, and I also implement all of our compliance requirements with Ohio EPA. So this piece really falls on us. Something we would like you to know essentially is that we treat the water before it hits our distribution system. We treat it with zinc orthophosphate, which is a corrosion control inhibitor. Essentially, that makes the water less corrosive. It also forms a coating on the inside of pipes to kind of make a physical barrier between lead pipes, galvanized pipes, and the water. Because we have really effective corrosion control, we see almost no detections of lead throughout our system. We do see a couple here and there. Usually they're very low level. Oftentimes they're below even the reportable amount, which is 5 to Ohio EPA. Our most recent sampling event, over 90% of our homes were less than 1.3 parts per billion. The action level is 15. So we do a really good job with ensuring that even though there are lead lines, even though there are galvanized lines within the city, and even in the city of Grandview, that water is not coming in contact with the material to absorb it and to create action level exceedances or to expose you to lead in the water. You're already drinking water that you should feel comfortable drinking, that is safe water to drink. Most of the samples we take are non-detect. The places that we are required to sample are the homes that are the highest risk. These are homes that have lead service lines. These are the homes we're sampling. And then drinking water, ultimately, we have a program with our Department of Public Health. In that program, anytime there is a child with elevated blood lead levels, we do a follow-up sample with the water. Almost none of those ever even show a detection of lead. In the whole 7-year history we've had with that, I think we've only had 7 that have had any kind of detect at all, and that's just detectable. That's not even above the action level. And so we can really confidently say that in Columbus, when you're drinking our water, it's not the primary source of exposure for lead. It's typically paint and dust in our city. You're already drinking water that, you know, we have made in a way that really limits your exposure to it or prevents it from being prevents you from being exposed to it. Sorry.
You want to talk about the service line for this next slide? Yeah, so I mentioned before, the lead service lines are going to be connected, are going to start being connected on Monday. It'll be most likely about 3 days, depending on the conditions that we get into. It might take a little bit longer, but I certainly expect it to be done next week. So,
I have a question.
yes,
When you're doing this work, is it going to be in the daytime?
yeah, it'll be during the day. Yes.
Because there were, it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, there were several nights when the work started at 2 in the morning.
So,
And I had to be up at 5 to go to work. I worked during the daytime. And I got about an hour and a half sleep because the work was being done outside of our house. And the noise of the machines didn't really allow me to sleep. And starting to work at 10 and 11 and 1 in the morning isn't the greatest thing.
yeah, it's
When
not,
I asked, not to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
to finish, what else happened was when I asked one of the workers, does this have to be done? I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, he gave me the attitude that he really didn't care that I had to be woken up. He didn't like it either, and he wasn't really nice to me in the fact that I had to work all day and then stay up all night. He was getting paid to work at night, and I wasn't getting paid to stay up all night. It wasn't very good customer experience, let me put it that way.
We understand that. We try to avoid that anytime we can. The problem we had to do, that was for the main, for the main line tie-in. And to do that main line tie-in, we have to shut water down. And that included quite a few.
And we didn't know that.
Why?
Nobody told us.
They had to shut, I'm telling you now, they had to shut. The reason why.
Now it doesn't help.
They did go and make sure anybody who was going to be turned off, they did go door to door to try to make sure everybody knew that.
Well, I may not have been
But
turned
you may not
off,
have been
though.
there. But the reason why they have to do it is because it shuts down so many people, shuts down businesses. That's why at night. But we don't do that unless it lasts.
I understand that, but we didn't know any of that. And also the attitude of this guy was horrible. In my business, if I act like that to any of my customers, I'd expect to lose them. He was really rude. I realized he was working at 2 in the morning.
I just want to say, like, a little bit of empathy and like taking responsibility for the fact that this project was not managed well would go a really long way, especially with me. I feel like it's just excuse after excuse after excuse, and it would just be nice if there was some acknowledgement that this was not handled in the way that it should have been. Okay.
In other words, maybe now would be a good time.
Yeah.
Let us go through the rest of the presentation, and then we'll have some more discussions.
I mean, yeah.
Finish up with the connection. We won't get through all this, and we'll.
And I'd like to talk to you guys individually to understand what the issues have been, and so we can work those out. Yeah, you know, we can always do better. Everybody can do better. So, you know, we'll continue to try and do better, and that's kind of why we're trying to be here, is trying to be provide as much information as we can, and we'll continue to try and do better. So.
I have a question about the former slide. I'm hoping we can just, because I'm not sure if you want to talk about stuff as we go through it, or if you want to wait to the end. With the corrosion control, my understanding is that once they start to do all these tie-ins, that kind of, it's like asbestos. Like, it's like, you know, you kind of dredge some things up, and like that can cause the lead levels to escalate at that time. So, I mean, I understand that those are the numbers overall. What kind of data do you have about what happens to the water into our houses after the tie-ins to the galvanized steel lines?
So when we do work on service lines, when we do work on mains, there is the possibility that sediment, particulate, things like that could stir up. And in areas with lead service lines, it can cause an increase in the lead that might be available to the water, essentially. The most effective thing you can do for that is flush. That's why we provided Grandview with flushing instructions. That's why you will be provided with flushing instructions afterwards. Because once the tie-in has occurred, you will have a service line that is no longer lead, or if you keep your galvanized service line, you'll still have that barrier that existed before, and you will have new fresh water coming in from the main. Because there's no lead in the water from the main, if you flush your house effectively, any of that particulate, any of that sediment that's built up that might cause an increased chance of exposure to lead will be flushed out the drain, out of your house and away from your house. So now your house will have fresh water from the main that we know is lead-free. So that's how you reduce your risk, essentially, that is created by doing this work. There is the chance.
Follow up on that. So the flushing thing is very kind of nebulous to me, and I think to a lot of people in this room. Like, after we get a clear, like when you say we know you've got clear water coming in, how do we know that? How do we know that our flushing has been effective? And then let's say that I go out and I buy a testing kit or something so that I can try and ease my mind about this. If I get one clear test, am I safe to assume no more lead? Or do we keep flushing?
Okay, so there's two parts to that question.
Right.
The first one is anything that's set up by the water, or by the work. So the service line's been replaced, we've kicked up a little particulate, a little bit of sediment. When you do that whole home flush, you've turned on every faucet in your house, you've removed your aerators, you have flushed that old water that's sitting in your pipes out, drawn new water in from the main. That means that water that you have drawn from that main in is lead-free. Now, in your house, because your homes are probably built pre-2014, there is potential to have lead solder. There's potential to have lead pieces and fixtures. There's the potential for lead or brass pieces and fixtures that could also be leaded. If water sits in your plumbing for over 6 hours, it has the opportunity to come into contact with anything in your house that could have lead in it. My house was built in 1986. I drink Columbus's water. In 1986, they allowed solder that had up to 8% lead. So my house has leaded solder as part of its copper plumbing. When your water sits for a long period of time and it has the chance to be exposed to any of those, it could absorb pieces of lead from the plumbing in your house. That's outside of our control as a city and outside of even Grandview's control in general. The best thing you can do then is to flush in the morning. So the way I tell people to think about it, water in general, the water in your plumbing is kind of like a water in a cup. It's still just water. If you were to fill up a cup, put it on your counter and leave it there, how long would you leave it for before you're like, oh, I should probably get some fresh water? The fresh water is coming from the main. The main is lead-free. And so anytime you want to draw fresh water into your house, you should flush before you turn on the tap and drink the water. For me, when I get up in the morning, I'm a big tea drinker. I drink a lot of tea. I always fill up my tea kettle. I get up, I go into my kitchen, I turn on the tap, I pack my lunch, I go turn back off the tap. Well, then I fill up my tea kettle. So I let it run for a little bit before I fill it back up. And typically, if it's been sitting for 6 hours, so if you're worried about your internal plumbing, you're looking at 30 seconds to 3 minutes of a flush, roughly. You're just trying to move the water through your house so that you get fresh water from the main. So there's 2 pieces. After the work, a whole house flush should make you good. The water from the main is now in your house. You've flushed it all out, you've moved it through all the pipes in your house. In general, in terms of just having lead-safe practices, that long-term exposure, if you're just sitting there, you've gone to bed at night, you've been at work all day, you're finally coming home, then you should flush to try to get some fresh water then as well. Because those are things that are outside of our control. The corrosion control does help with those too. But you know, that's interior plumbing, interior fixtures. So we don't have any control over that. You know, we can only help you make good choices for yourself and do lead-safe practices to try to reduce that risk. Does that help?
I think so.
Okay, good. And we're back to flushing. So, and I think that's, you know, that's the one thing that I can drive home at all through here, are lead-safe practices that you can do at home. We treat the water before it comes to your house. We do the best we can to make sure that that water that comes to your house is as free of lead as possible. There is still lead in our infrastructure. There's some evidence now that galvanized pipes absorbed lead possibly in the past. The corrosion control works for both of those. It works for galvanized pipes and it works for lead pipes. So the service lines that are coming to your house that may have lead in them should be protected by our corrosion control. That said, there's still things in your house that might have lead pieces to them. And you know, we kind of have to partner ultimately to make sure that lead-safe practices are happening at home. Even if you're not flushing, even if you just wake up and fill your tea kettle up, like you know, sometimes I do because I'm half awake, we have very low levels of detectable lead in our system, so you should feel comfortable even then. But if you are really worried about it, and in general, good practices are flush your lines. So you know, here are kind of the 3 practices we get after. Cleaning your faucet aerators. That's something else that a lot of people don't know or don't do. There's a little screen on your aerator. There's a key that you can buy at a hardware store if you don't have one. Unscrew them, soak them in some vinegar, give them a little brush with like a little toothbrush, make sure they're clean, put them back on. Do that with semi-regularities, like, you know, once a month, quarterly, whatever time. The sink's a really nasty sink, like I have a gross like mop sink, maybe more frequently if you're gonna drink out of it, and if you put gross things in there. But in general, that little screen can sometimes catch sediment, so if anything were to come loose, you want to get it off that screen so that water's not flowing past it. And then ultimately, you want to use cold water for either drinking or cooking. The water that sits in your hot water tank, like that glass of water on your counter, has sat there for a while. And it's also sat there at temperatures that, you know, should be hot enough to kill off bacteria and stuff, should be hot enough that, you know, it is still safe to drink, but it's been there a long time. And so if it's had any sort of opportunity to create corrosion, it's just sitting in your hot water tank. You want to drink or cook with cold water because we know that's water that you flushed in and should be fresh from the main. So those are the 3 practices we tell people to take.
Emily, can I ask you a follow-up question? You mentioned lead solder that could exist inside of a house and somebody's had plumbing work done, but that would be on the outside of the pipe, right? I mean, would it have a way of getting inside of a?
Ideally, it's on the outside of the pipe. It depends on the quality of soldering that plumber did. You know, maybe they got really heavy-handed at some point, and there's a little piece on the inside of the pipe. There's still some opportunity there for exposure. It shouldn't be gobs, but you never know. Sometimes there's the chance.
If you're gonna get to this, I'll hold back, but regarding the flushing that is recommended after the procedure, and obviously it mentions immediately for safety, what if we're not in town? Is it a pressure issue? to flush it, or are we simply flushing primarily for, you know, for the lead and participants?
It's lead, and it's lead particulate. If you're not in town, you would flush it before you drink the water, so when you get back in town.
Okay.
And that's something I would tell a lot of people, especially if you overwinter somewhere, if you're gone for a really long period of time, you might want to consider a whole home flush when you get back, especially if you have older plumbing or lead service lines in general. You know, if you board up your house for 6 months, that water sits for 6 months. It's a good idea to flush it, you know, flush your house in general. So it shouldn't impact that you're out of town. It shouldn't be immediately because the water's coming in from the main. It's just a matter of turning them on, flushing it out, creating the pressure to push that particulate out, get your sediment out.
Thank you.
So I'm going to continue on, talking a little bit about regulations. I know there's been some questions about them. There's some changes happening right now in the lead and copper rule world, and I think that's creating confusion with galvanized service lines. Currently, though, we are under Ohio EPA's guidelines and Ohio EPA's rules. All the work we do has to be in compliance with Ohio EPA, and we follow their current regulations. In areas impacted by lead service lines, if all lead is not removed, we have to provide the following 3 things. 45-day notice ahead of work that also includes health language, so that's that health language as well. And we also have to offer you a filter afterwards. That's if all lead is not removed. They do not consider galvanized services lead at this time. Because we are removing all lead on this project, we don't have to provide these pieces at this time. This is a full service line replacement is how they're considering it now. And so that's why, you know, those things aren't offered at this time. Now, if you had lead on your side, we would have to do that. Yes?
I'm now understanding that. Why didn't we get a letter? I mean, just, I'm not saying you have to do it under Ohio law, like, we are now, and I'll share more of this when I have questions for the city, but like, why doesn't the city of Columbus send a letter to homeowners and give us time?
Because this project is being done by the city of Grandview. So
Okay, so
Grandview
they're
is
passing them
the-
up to you, just so we're aware,
Yeah.
and we have gotten letters that say that it's your fault because like you're managing the project. So, but it really creates this like frantic situation, and now you've got all these citizens that are like up in arms about this. If we had gotten a letter 6 months ago, I really highly doubt most of these people would have taken this much time out of their Friday afternoon to be here with you.
Right, so the letters came from the city of Grandview. I know they mailed a letter in September and October to all the residences.
Yes.
So you should have received a
We
letter.
dropped letters in September and October.
On the 24th?
We actually, I believe, sent letters in at the beginning of June, at the end of June.
No.
And we had 2
Absolutely
public
not.
meetings previously to this about the project.
Never, no. And could you show me those letters? Because I never got them.
Nor did I, nor did
And if you didn't get them, I apologize. I mean, I believed that outreach was being made, and that is what we did on a different project last year. We were following kind of the same process.
Did anyone in this room get that letter?
Those initial letters, they didn't explicitly talk about the lead service.
Okay.
No,
There we go.
you've heard
We had
nothing
letters of
about this
construction, but I'm
until
sorry.
September 24th.
September 24th.
September 24th was the first
Yeah.
that
At the
us
public
even
meetings,
having,
we spoke of
being
it.
given the option of replacing water lines was brought up. That was it.
Okay. So at the public meetings, we did speak of it, but, you know, I'm sorry.
There was a lot of talk at the city council meeting about best practices, and like people kind of throw around that term. But to me, best practices doesn't mean the bare minimum. And it seems like everybody's falling back on, we don't have to give you anything, so we're not gonna do it. But you're sitting in a room with a lot of people who wanna get this work done, and actually do wanna keep their families safe. But we don't have enough time. In fact, like I've hired someone, like he can't get it done before you're turning on these
And
meetings.
part of that is because of the different permits that are required by the city of Grandview that aren't required by the city of Columbus, which is putting us out even further in getting this work done. So I guess, you know, that's something we can speak to later.
Well,
Yeah,
keep in mind that there's not a deadline to do your work, first of all, and we are providing the instruction. Columbus is here to speak to, and I will recognize there have been a lot of questions, really in the last month, since the September 24th letter. We have never had this level of interest in a water line replacement project, and we're responding now, okay? So I'm sure our practices are going to change after this, but truly, we've done this many times and there's never been this sort of outreach. We welcome the opportunity, we want to share the information, we've asked Columbus to be here, to provide it to you. So I guess that's my response, but the other thing is that I think that Emily maybe can speak to the timing of the line replacement, both when that needs to occur, which can be later, and then I think you maybe can preview some products that will be rolled out next year that will assist people in getting it done in ways that you couldn't get it done before. So
I also
this
wanna-
is new information.
Sure.
We just learned this in the last.
Our
week.
sidewalks though have been torn up now for 6 months. And so there does seem to me to be some sort of a time interest in getting it done before those sidewalks are replaced. Because the plumbers that we've spoken to are saying that we are now responsible for covering the cost of those sidewalks, even though they're already torn up. And have been torn up and replaced and torn up and replaced multiple times. So to me, it seems like if we're talking about ways to work together and to do things better, you know, allowing the people who want to get this done in a timely fashion some time to get it done, so that then when you do replace all of the sidewalks, you can replace those as well, and that's not on our time.
Yeah, we've had a couple of residents that have reached out to us that have said that that's why we were asking residents to let us know if you were planning on doing that. We've had a couple of residents that have reached out and said that they were planning on doing it and that they were hiring a contractor to do that work. You know, if there's a sidewalk panel that's removed for, you know, that to do your tie-in into your house, the city will take care of that with the project, with the final sidewalk
That's great.
work.
That's not what was communicated to one of the plumbers that I spoke with. He was told he needed the
He
full
never
sidewalk
spoke to
permit.
us. He never
Okay.
spoke to myself.
And just to be clear, about permits and stuff, we require them to have a plumbing permit to do this, and the reason we want to do that, they need to be registered, and the registration really is only proof that are insured and they're bonded. So we don't want guys coming in town that aren't insured and bonded. They can walk in their office and get it all the same day, so there's no holdup of any kind. We have staff there that will take care of that stuff, you know, basically instantly for them. They just have to provide the same type of paperwork they have to provide city plumbers when they go to the city when they do any plumbing work.
That's not actually what I'm hearing, so can I read a text message that I got from a plumber?
Sure.
Okay. Grandview is a bit more difficult to work with on water lines. They have a water line permit process and a right-of-way excavation permit process. Is that accurate?
No, we're not making them have a right-of-way permit.
Okay, well,
Well,
he
that's, when
said
did
he had
that
to get it.
change? Because he told
And-
me today that that's what he needed to get.
And sidewalk permit if needed. Right? Okay, so 3 permits.
Mhm.
They want their inspection scheduled in advance. Normally in Columbus, and maybe the Columbus people can talk about this, there is no water line permit, only ROW, and we call in for the water line inspection when we are done, and they come same day if we call by 3 p.m. In Grandview, we have to call for Columbus inspection anyways, since you have Columbus water. It would be nice if Grandview could incorporate some sort of streamlined project with this process with this project. We do hundreds of replacements a year without permit requirements. With Grandview, we have to complete the permit application, provide a drawing, wait for approval, then pay the fees and wait for the permit to be issued. It seems so unnecessary when we have to follow the Columbus Water Department's process. I mean, could those processes be relaxed right now? I mean, meeting people halfway,
We
it seems
have
like it
already,
should be.
like we're saying, we'll replace that piece of sidewalk. We're not requiring a right-of-way permit, and we don't require another inspection. Columbus is the only inspection that happens on that, so they're doing the inspections, they schedule a film, that's the inspection, that's it, it's the water line. We don't have another guy come look at the same thing Columbus does. So they're not, I don't know.
Well,
we
this
need
was
to
his
have you call us
experience from
back.
doing it once already this week. I mean, he was working on one, his name, it's A1, so,
Mhm.
And
I
I
mean, you
spoke,
guys have probably talked to him.
Yeah.
But so, if that's changed, then, you know, I hope that that can be communicated to all the plumbers, you know?
I will follow up with the clerk, but I believe we've addressed all this, and he's not quite
Well,
got
we
that.
actually talked to two different
plumbers.
It's not actually the same person.
Yeah, he
So-
needs to call us back, because I don't think he's
And
quite
speak
getting
to
it.
you?
Yeah, he can talk to me, or the clerk will all talk to her, and, you know.
I would like him to speak to you directly.
Yeah,
If you're
sure.
the one coordinating this project, I think
Have
you
him
can
call,
take
my
that
card's
on.
on the table, so, definitely have him call me. But we're trying to help, we wanna get this done as quickly as possible also, and we wanna help you get this done, so if there's any issue with that, I'll address that with the contractor. But they weren't registered, so they did take care of the registration, and he got the permits, I know he's done one job that I know of, and we'll work with him to get them done.
I would like to give Emily a chance to to talk about something that both of you raised. I apologize, my voice is today. As the mayor said, there is no deadline. This whole notion of, something has to happen within 45 days or within the completion date of the project, that is not the case. That's not been changed as a result of any new regs. But Emily, if you could maybe just elaborate on.
What's the deadline for the sidewalk then? For us not to replace the sidewalk in the city to replace the sidewalk?
We're gonna need to have those done, so we're gonna use the same contractor, so it needs to be done before the project is complete. So their goal is to be finishing up by Thanksgiving, is what we're looking for.
So we would need to have it completed before Thanksgiving for you to take on the cost of the sidewalk replacement.
Right, because the same contractor's gonna fix it.
If you have it scheduled, just reach out to us and let us know.
If we have it scheduled.
If you know when it
If we have
is,
it
just let us know
scheduled
and
and
try
we
and
can't.
work with it.
Okay, so like, obviously, the number of homes that may pursue this solution. If we have it scheduled, but it can't be completed prior to Thanksgiving, but scheduled, is there wiggle room there with regard
Yes.
to your
Yeah.
willingness to help with that cost?
We will work with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the pilot program?
So I'll talk a little bit about future regulations. So I know there's been some confusion because the rule is changing. The federal government just finalized the new lead and copper rule improvements. There's quite a few of them that are coming, big changes that are coming. Part of that includes this confusion over galvanized lines, because there's evidence that they absorb lead particles or have in the past, will now be required to be replaced like lead lines. And so what we consider a full replacement today will change to a full replacement in the future, and there may be additional requirements for us to do these full replacements as we move forward. We have to develop a process to make that happen, especially to go all the way to the home, and we're working on that because we know that we're going to have to do things by 2027. So Ohio EPA has to adopt the rules first, guidance has to be given to us on how we manage this, we have to figure out how we're going to pay for it, but this will change things starting in 2027. We're just not there yet. However, we're trying to make sure that we're doing practices now that keep you safe, and we're confident what we're doing now keeps you safe. One of the things that it requires is the creation of our inventory. Our inventory is online. You can go there and look at what service line material you have on the public side as well as the private side. I will say there are a lot of unknowns in Grandview. The tap cards that we have for Grandview are very old. Most of them are over 100 years old. They're beautiful to look at. They have really nice, pretty writing on them, but they don't have the materials on them. And so that's something that we'll have to work on over the next 7 years, is to identify the public and the private side. You as a homeowner can help us identify your private side by submitting your material to us in the inventory. So that helps us kind of plan as we move forward, and Grandview plan as we move forward with how we're going to partner to start removing these service lines. Other things that will come with this new regulation is we're going to increase our compliance monitoring. It actually lowers the action level from 15 to 10. We are confident we're going to meet that. We have never been anywhere near that. And so that's not something that's really on our radar as a concern. Even with the new type of sampling, we've done the 5th liter sampling. We've already tried that. We're still seeing the same results. It does require the full service line replacement over the next 10 years, and that's after 2027. So really we have until 2037 to make that happen. In order to do that, we are working on a program. We are working on a full program in the city of Columbus in terms of going all the way to the home systematically. We will work with Grandview to do something similar in Grandview. We're not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but because we're governed by contracts, because we work together through contracts, we are going to have to make addendums to those and figure out how that's going to happen. It has to happen per the rule. So something will be happening in Grandview over the next 13 years. I don't have what that is today, but we will be working on it. In the short term though, we do have pathways for homeowners that are trying to do proactive replacement as well as private line breaks. None of this will start until March of next year, because we have to implement this as part of our budget cycle and as part of our contract cycle with customers. This will be available, or with contractors. This will be available system-wide. That includes Grandview. So one of them is our LEAP program, which is our lead elimination assistance program. If you have a galvanized service line and you would like to remove it sooner than before, you know, we eventually get to Grandview one of those days, or we figure out with Grandview how we're going to do this work, you can participate in our LEAP program. What this program does is it's no upfront cost to the homeowner. You will enter into a 3-party agreement with your contractor, so you will select your own contractor. The city, you and the contractor will sign a 3-party agreement. And the way it'll be funded up front is with a mortgage that's placed on your property if you own the property. That mortgage has no interest and isn't due for 99 years. So essentially it's a free loan until you either sell your home or want to totally pay off your mortgage. That's the way that those types of mortgages are placed. We do this really successfully with our STEP program, which is to eliminate septic tanks. So we're doing a similar model with our lead program. So that will be available starting March of next year. So if you're not replacing today, but it's something that you think you want to do in the future, ahead of whenever the deadline is that we might get there in the next 13 years, that's something that will be available to you. The other one is insurance. We're partnering with an insurance provider. Insurance is for breaks, it's not a proactive replacement. But one of the concerns on this project, anytime you leave really old lines behind, is that they're old, they're fragile. As you hook into this new plumbing and it gets repressurized, sometimes they might break. We already recommend insurance, but we will have our own partnered insurance moving forward, and it might be something that you can participate in through your bill. It's a low cost per month. When you take out that insurance, if your service line breaks, it will be covered by your insurance provider, and a full replacement will be covered if you have a galvanized service line, because our rules and regs are changing that we are no longer going to allow repairs to galvanized lines. We're going to make the insurance provider and that contractor do the full thing. They're not gonna leave you with a piece of it behind. So ultimately, you know, those are 2 options that I know are happening in March of next year. As soon as the funds are available and we're able to implement those programs, like I said, system-wide, y'all are included in that because y'all are a resident of Grandview, but also a customer of us as well. We're going to continue to work together. The rule just finalized, so we're having discussions. We're having discussions internally at Columbus in terms of what that partnership looks like, in terms of how we will do system-wide removal, but that's coming. We have 13 years to do it. It probably will take us 13 years to do it. We have a lot of service lines that need to be replaced ultimately. One crew can do about 1.5, usually 1 service line a day. Currently, we know in the whole system, we have about 40,000 lines that need to be replaced. It's going to be a long process. It's going to take a long time, but we're trying to make proactive options for people who want it done sooner in case you're not first on the list ultimately. So those are something that will be available to you. Other thing I'd like to mention is we do have more information, and as we add programs, they'll be at our website, columbus.gov LSLR, which is lead service line replacement. Please follow us there and kind of understand what we're doing. And as we work with Grandview, we'll do a good job with them to try to communicate to you what's available for you as well through Grandview's website as well. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about the insurance. We have insurance now.
Perfect.
It is only on if it breaks.
Yes.
Now,
I got it here.
if you are doing it and it breaks, is that covered?
So.
I mean, it's not being broken because it naturally broke. You're causing it to get broken.
So I can speak to, you know, as a Columbus person that deals with things like this. I'm not your insurance, well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't review the policy.
No.
But what I will tell you is that typically insurance, because we're working on this partnership right now, covers what they consider age-related failure. Repressurizing a line is normal pressure on that line. It is normal wear on that line. We're not hitting it with shovels. We're not digging it up, putting a backhoe through it. We're not poking it with forks. We're just plugging water back into it. Your water line should be able to withstand that. And if it can't, in my opinion, your policy should cover it because it's failing due to age at that point. It's not failing because it's being repressurized. It was unpressurized and repressurized. Being able to transport water through the line when we hook back up to it should be a normal process for that line. That's normal use.
Will the pressure increase?
The pressure should not change, no. The pressure will stay the same in Grandview as it
Pressure
was
of
before.
what is it now, 60?
I don't know Grandview.
It's going to 60, I thought it was going up. Somebody told me that it was going up.
It's not going
Plumber
up.
told me it was going up.
It should not
It's
go.
it's coming from the same lines that the previous water line was coming from. So there's gonna be no change in
No,
the actual
it's-
pressure.
It's more of an increase in volume than pressure.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And once again,
So the rumor of it going to 80 is not,
I don't know
Not
where that
there.
came from.
not to the best of my knowledge, no, there shouldn't be any change in pressure.
Doesn't work that way.
And whatever pressure that is given to your line, so even if it's within the normal operation of our system, because we do have different areas that have slightly different pressure based on how far they are from the towers and, our pumping stations.
excuse me, the other thing I have is, the line comes in through the meter, which is new, along with the sending device, goes up my wall, goes to the back. The first pipe off of that goes to the outside. Can I use that to flush all of it, or do I have to turn everything on? Bear with me for a second, because unless I open up something else in the house, when they switch over, that will be the only place that the water can go, is out to my outside
So,
bid.
personally, I agree with you. If you leave the rest of the water off, it hasn't been impacted by sediment, that makes sense to me. The guidance we provide is the industry standards. I'm going to give you what the industry has, tested, verified, knows works.
Okay,
If you're comfortable doing that because you understand how the pressure works in your house, and you feel like that is sufficient, I don't have any authority over what you do in your house, you're welcome to do that. I can't recommend anything beyond the industry standard.
okay, and then the other recommendation is 30 minutes. That's a
Yes.
lot of gallons of water.
It is a
That's
lot
a
of.
lot of cubic feet. We're talking 250, 275.
It should not raise are you talking about cubic feet? In terms of bills, you might see a slight increase in your bill if you do 30 minutes of flushing. I'm not gonna tell you it will have zero impact, but it should be less than $10. It should not be a significant increase on your bill. And once again, that is the most effective way after this. If you wanna limit it to one faucet, if you feel like there's a different way that you can flush and you feel comfortable with that rate, that's up to you. That's the industry standard. That's what's been tested by AWWA and ANSI, which are the two, basically authority groups on this. We're following their standard because we know that standard's been verified. There's data out there that says 5 minutes is sufficient. There's data out there that says it needs to be 30. I'm going with what the industry tells me is the best possible method that will guarantee you fresh water in your house.
If I have particulate in the water, if I take a sample, hold underneath the water, if I get particulates at that time, I need to continue to flush. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if you can see it, absolutely, keep flushing. Most of the time, you won't be able to even see any very small particulate that would be able to come about from that. But if you can absolutely see sediment, you want to keep flushing for sure.
We want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask questions. Are there additional questions? You want to raise your hand? Yes.
So we talked a lot about the lead, but another concern is that, these lines could actually fail when they are reattached. So could you talk about Columbus's experiences with that? How often does that actually occur? And is that a legitimate concern?
So I would say it's a legitimate concern. I don't think it happens all the time. It happens enough that we try to warn people about it. I don't have any statistics off the top of my head right now with it. But I do know that it does happen at times.
So what would that look like at our house?
At your house?
Yeah, so would it be we just wouldn't have water pressure, or there would be flooding, or what should we be on the lookout for?
What you should be on the lookout for is areas that are suddenly wet that shouldn't be wet in your yard. So typically, what it looks like is it's usually the tree lawn or right beside the sidewalk. That's where it likes to fail, at least in my experience. It gets a little swampy. And so, you're outside and you're like, ooh, there's a puddle there. That puddle shouldn't be there. Or you might see it flowing across the sidewalk, lightly. When these fail, it's not spectacular. Usually it's not like, oh my God, there's water, it's coming out of the ground. It's, oh, this area of my yard is soupy. Why is this area of my yard soupy? A lot of times when they fail, you still have water pressure. You may not ever notice that it has broken in your yard. With that water pressure there, a lot of times when they fail, we can leave you on for a couple weeks while you find a contractor, and nobody's gonna come turn it off unless you're having catastrophic failure too. Currently, we do have a pilot project going on, And something that I would mention with that pilot project is that if you meet certain criteria and it fails and you're struggling to repair your line, please reach out to us because we may be able to add you to that pilot project to help you replace your line as well. That's another thing that is actively happening for us that we've made system-wide. So if you do run into that, you're truly struggling to replace it, we're gonna figure out a way to help you move forward with that, with our pilot project. But yes, it won't be a geyser. You shouldn't lose pressure in your home. The funny thing about water pressure, the reason we keep it pressurized at 60 PSI is that the minimum is actually 20. The reason it exists is that we want the water flowing out if your line breaks, or if a main breaks, or if anything breaks, because that prevents bacteria, that prevents metals, that prevents anything in the ground from coming in, because the pressure is always outward. So the water is still safe to drink, even though it's broken. The water may still be flowing in your home. It's usually, hey, my yard is swampy. That's usually what you look for. Things I will say about galvanized lines in general, most galvanized lines, we haven't allowed the installation of galvanized lines since the mid-60s. Most of them were installed before that. They're really old. And they are already probably kind of weepy because they're really old, and that metal is probably corroded a little bit over time on the exterior of it. And you know, a lot of times they will break with just the freeze-thaw cycle of the ground at this point because they're already old, they're already fragile, they're not very flexible lines. If you have a galvanized line, I would have insurance for sure, not just for projects, just in general. They're on borrowed time at this point.
But I do want to mention that, you know, in our last 2 years when we've had water line projects, some of the issues that we found is when they turn the water back on, the like bends or the screen that's in the meter will get kind of clogged up with material, and that's where you would have like low pressure or no pressure in your house right after the transfer. You know, if that happens, the first step in what I wouldn't say probably half or majority of those issues are at the screen on the meter. So all you have to do is just call Columbus. I think we've given that number in previous handouts. Call them, they'll come out, they'll drop the meter and put it back on, replace or clean the screen. And that's kind of resolved most of the water pressure issues that we've had in the last few water line projects.
We have a question right there.
Just a comment, I think our insurance company offered utility insurance a few years ago at a reasonable price, and we took it for a couple of years, and then they issued a bulletin limiting it to utilities less than 50 years old, which made it all pretty useless to us. So
Yeah.
that was the end of that.
We're in the process of reviewing actually RFP proposals for a partner with this. That is not something that will be included in anything we offer. They will be covering lines that should be functioning the way that they're intended to function.
Okay.
You mentioned doing an inventory of the lead service lines. Will you be doing that in Grandview as well?
Grandview's included in our inventory, so as Mayor Kearns mentioned, we are fully integrated with Grandview. Y'all, the way we serve water is through a contract. It's considered a full service contract. Because of that, we are the compliance holder for the system. We report out to Ohio EPA. I do most of the communication with Ohio EPA for us in totality. So they work with us to work with Ohio EPA. So for our inventory, when we submit it, Grandview is included with that. So if you go back to, I can't see Aubrey anymore. If you scan that, that should take you to our inventory, and your line should be on there.
And I'm sorry, not the private line, but the, like I thought you were referencing maybe the public line. And I'm on council, and I know one of the other council members, O'Malley Houston, had asked 3 years ago about setting aside some funds to do an inventory, that I think was was it the public side? I think it was for the public.
The inventory should be on both sides of the line, is it not?
So the inventory is on both sides of the line. There are quite a few unknowns on the public side in Grandview because the tap cards are really old and they didn't record materials on them. The way we will identify the public sides, we have 7 years to identify all service lines in our inventory. Unknowns are allowed at this time. We're allowed to say it's here, we don't know what the material is yet. In 7 years, really, it's 2034 from the effective date of the rule. we will have to know what that is. There's a couple of ways we can go about doing that. One of them is hydrovac excavating, one of them is projects. Just as we do general maintenance, we're gonna identify them as we go. The public side's difficult because it's underground and it's in the street. I don't think y'all want us digging up the street just to go, oh, this is copper. It's not a practical way to go about it. It's, or lead or galvanized or whatever. It's expensive, it's not practical. We're going to try to identify them in a cost-effective way. And a lot of that will go with other work that's done. So because we know we have galvanized on the private side, that's why I would really encourage y'all to turn in your private side. As we start systematically looking at removing things, we're gonna uncover the public side with it, and we'll be able to say this is part of the project. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure I understood something that you just said. Did you just say on the public side that you're not sure what some of the materials are? How can this be then considered a full replacement if you don't know?
In this project, sorry, that's for the inventory, so that's a totality for our system currently today. On this project, we will see every service line that is uncovered, and as they see it,
But
they
how do you
will
know in
remove it.
advance? I guess that's what my question is.
How
Like,
do you
it's
know in
more
advance?
just like if you don't know, how do you know how to give notice and get compliance? I guess I just am very confused by that.
So I think that's valid because it is kind of confusing. It has to do with the way the rule is written about areas impacted with lead. There is guidance issued by Ohio EPA that says you must issue these notices in advance in areas that are impacted by lead. The guidance that is adjacent to that says the area is not considered impacted if you remove all lead. We may not know in advance, but if our practice is to remove all lead as we go, that's how we know that we don't have to abide by those particular requirements. And that is our practice. So even on the private side, we have 288,000 lines system-wide. Out of those 288,000, I know 220,000 of them right now. We have not found any lead on the private side. I don't know why that is. We have a couple theories. For some reason in Columbus, we don't have lead on the private side. I can't promise you that I'm not gonna find one. It's a possibility I will find one. What I can promise you is that we won't leave it behind. And
Nor has Grandview.
And nor will
We never
Grandview.
found any lead on the private side in the years of doing projects.
And with our partnership, and with us being the compliance holder, that's our practice. We will not leave lead behind. We haven't left lead behind since 1996. At this point, we have contractors in place that if we were to count it on the private side, we would take care of the private side if we encountered it as well. It's not going to remain in the system if we see it. So even if I don't know, I have, if I have an inkling it's there, or if I come across it, it's going out.
May I ask a follow-up question for Columbus Water? Are you able to go back to the slide that talks about how a partial is defined under current Ohio law? So this bullet point second, in areas impacted by lead service line in what's considered a partial replacement. So right now, under Ohio statute and which follows the US EPA lead and copper rule, correct me if I'm wrong, what we have going on up the hill on First Avenue is not technically a partial replacement.
It's not.
But it will be
It
in
will be.
2027. So my question for Columbus Water is why not try to meet that standard that is forthcoming when we've had several years to plan for it and follow these best practices around 45-day notice, requiring health language, and offering the certified filter now?
Because we have not had a long time plan for it. These rules that US EPA just finalized October 8th of this year.
But they actually have been in the works in draft form for at least a year, if not longer.
Draft form can change, so we can't plan around draft form. We do our best to plan around draft form, and we've tried to get systems in place to be able to start moving forward. I anticipate we will be moving forward before 2027. We need all the time we can to remove them, just to be upfront. It'll probably be before 2027. The reason we don't do the 5-day notice and the filters is frankly, our corrosion control is really good. Our sampling indicates that it's not a risk to customers, and we know that flushing is effective afterwards. And so between flushing, between our corrosion control, what we do today offers safe water. And so I know that these are in place if we do partials, and if lead is left behind on a customer side. The science that's out there that indicates galvanized absorbs lead, there's not a lot of science that actually says how much lead it might throw into water. It does say that if you don't have corrosion control, there's a high risk. We have really good corrosion control.
Can I ask a follow-up on the corrosion control and Columbus Water's practices? Is this the same practice that every water system in the nation follows, and are there different practices around that? And where does Columbus, I guess, fall in that?
Right, so I think that's a really good point. It's not what every system follows in the nation. Systems manage corrosion in different ways. Some of them use pH adjustments, some of them feed a chemical like orthophosphate like we do. Some of them don't utilize corrosion control, they use different practices. That's why you see different levels of lead throughout, you know, the nation. We are very confident in our corrosion control. Like I said, we have 2 decades of very, very low or non-detect results. When we go out and do the sampling, we sample in the areas that are the highest risk. We know our water is safe at this point. In terms of doing replacement, we're on board with it. We're on board with replacement. I think it's good to just get the risk out in general. But I am confident drinking the water today with the practices we use. They are the best of the best at the end of the day.
Emily, I believe that you kind of alluded earlier to the fact that this 3-year window is also the opportunity for the states to adopt the federal standard that was just passed, which takes time, and for the states and the local systems to create programs for how they're going to implement that next 10-year phase.
That's correct. So, I mean, and that's true too. The state hasn't adopted the federal rules. There's pieces of the new federal rules that are in conflict with the state's current rules. We have to abide by the state's current rules right now. I can't just go out and do what I want ahead to get ahead of the game. I have to pass it through them to make sure it meets their compliance requirements too.
We're gonna wrap up, oh, go ahead.
The September notice gave instructions on how to test the pipe coming into the house to determine what the material is. Should we be confident that whatever it is at the meter coming into the basement is the same material that goes to the street?
So that is the material that goes to the curb stop. That's your side of the material. Anything that's in the street, you should be confident will be replaced because they're gonna see it and take care of it.
What I'm saying is
Is it all the way?
right. Just
In
because
general,
it's copper coming into the house, do we know that it's copper out to the curb stop?
It should be,
It should.
can't guarantee it, but they did piece pipes together and do that type of thing, so either it's galvanized in all the copper all the way out, but the piece coming in through your wall should be the same one all the way out.
But I assume the only way to tell is to dig and find
Well,
out.
we should be able to tell you.
It will tell.
Well, so when we transfer these services over, we're gonna be documenting what that material is that we encounter out at the curb stop at the street on both sides.
Will you be notifying us?
It'll be in our inventory, so
It'll
you
be
can follow our
updated in our
inventory.
inventory.
They'll
Will
give it
you
to
be
us.
notifying us though?
There's a link to the inventory. I don't know
I
how
don't think-
notification works at the door, but.
If
the-
we
the
will,
inventory
so
will
if
be
you guys are home, when we transfer the service over, our inspector will be able to tell you what it
I
is.
think it'd be easy to just leave a note on the door and say it's copper.
So that brings up a good point. We will be, when we transfer these services over, we will be leaving a note on the door that just states that it's been transferred over with, again, the flushing instructions and stuff like that. I mean, I think it's something that we can do. We can have our inspector, write down on there what the material is if you would like.
That would be the right thing to do.
And
Just,
if-
if the doorbell rings and I don't get to the door in time,
You'll
why
know pretty
not
quick
write
which
it
it
down?
is.
It
And if
doesn't
you
make
don't get
sense.
it, I would call the inspector email him. If for some reason it gets missed, I would encourage you to call him and ask afterwards if it gets missed, but we will try to do that, absolutely.
And Matt Bowden is the inspector on site, he's been fantastic, so if you still have a question, or if you didn't write it on yours or whatever, look at his calling, he's gonna have a note of that for your address, so, we'll tell him to put those on there, but if somehow you don't get it, you can call Matt and he'll be able to tell you.
And another question, if it is copper, does that mean that it does not need to be replaced?
Correct.
And how do we, and I might have missed something last time, how will we know when our particular line is going to get hooked up?
You're gonna get this notice as soon as they do it. I mean, they're gonna do them as quickly as they can.
It depends on, it just depends on timing and how long it takes. It's hard to know how long it's gonna take.
I understand, but
these
like the
until
day
we're-
before or so?
Well,
kinda
they'll
know.
be starting Monday. It'll be next week sometime.
Which way are you going?
Yeah, where are
I was
you?
gonna say, is there
We're
any way
gonna
we
start
could
on the-
like, cause it's like, I would love to be at the end with that, like, you know, like, if there are people, I mean, is there any sort of mind paid if we're like, look, like, can we bump it out? Cause I'm trying to get this work done before my line is switch over, but,
I don't think that matters.
It's gonna be done within the next, I mean, literally the first of the week. It's most likely everyone will be done by Wednesday.
Just curious though, do you know which?
Where you're starting.
So we're gonna be starting on the east and going to the west.
Okay.
So all the way down the hill, basically.
Yeah.
Not
well,
down
it's like,
there.
it's
No,
close
it's
to
at
Trumbull
Virginia.
Park.
It stops at Virginia.
Yeah.
It starts at Virginia, I should say.
So the new water line was to Virginia. So anything to the east of there.
And the contractor's looking to have 2 crews out there, so it's gonna go further.
So we're close to Grandview Ave, so it'll be a while for us.
It'll probably be Tuesday or Wednesday,
Last.
yeah.
You're better off.
Yeah.
And if you have plastic, it
We have copper.
wouldn't need to be replaced either. The
Right.
contract, on the private side, you have plastic or
Yeah.
copper.
I want to go back to Molly's question though. If her plumber shows up the day before the transfer, or 2 days before the transfer, is that okay?
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
It doesn't really,
You can do it
the
before or
timing is
You can
irrelevant.
do it before or after, yeah.
You had another question?
Did you say earlier that if you found a lead pipe going into the house, which you think is almost never gonna happen, you would replace it right then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so if you've got lead, it's gonna be,
Yeah, we're gonna have to
It's
replace
not gonna
that
be
as
left
part of
there.
our process.
Correct.
Kind of a technical clarifying question, if I may, I don't know if it's more for, the engineering firm or Columbus Water, but, okay, so for folks who have galvanized steel on their private side, and they don't get it changed before the new service lines are hooked up, the new copper on the public side is hooked up, they're gonna have copper, touching galvanized steel.
Correct.
Is that correct? For folks who, for folks who do it before they go online, they're gonna have the old lead touching a new copper. Can you say whether one or the other of those is safer to do?
I can't say whether one or the other is safer. The risk with galvanized is that it's set there for a long time downstream of lead and possibly could have absorbed some of the lead particles. If you put a new copper on a lead, I mean, you're doing your own work, so I still would flush after that if the lead's still there. So I mean, maybe that's something to consider. The lead pipe is still there. You've now knocked it around a little bit by connecting to it. It might be better to wait until afterwards. I don't have any data that supports that, but you know, if you think through the process, maybe you don't, if you have the option, maybe you wait until they transfer and then do your side.
I think the flushing is probably the key.
Flushing is the key to everything, really, at the end of the day. That's my mantra. I feel like I need a song and a dance about it or something, but whether it's a whole home flush after a lead line replacement, or you're just flushing a little bit in the morning to, you know, flush out your pipes to ensure that, you know, the water you have is fresh, that is the key.
Would you, I mean, if this was happening in your house after 30 minutes, would you test the water then? Or would you just be like, it's fine?
I would be, it's fine, yeah. I'm very confident in our water, and I, you know, do this day in and day out. I would tell you if I wasn't. I mean, I'm pretty upfront usually about it. I would use it. I would use it if it had a lead service line right now and they drop the meter and I did appropriate flushing. I fully believe the flushing will take care of any particulate or anything that's there, and that our corrosion control with it does the right thing. It does a good job, and our data reflects that.
Emily, I think you had information on your website about how to do the whole home flush, floor by floor.
We do, and I think they have guidance here today. It also came with a letter.
Okay.
If you need additional guidance, we do have our Lead Safe hotline. So there's a phone number you can call the City of Columbus. We also have Lead Safe lines at columbus.gov, which is an email. I think both of those were in the letter, and they're up on this today as well. If you have general questions about lead in your house, reach out to us. We'll respond to you. You know, we want you to feel confident in the water you're drinking as well.
We would like to thank you for coming.
sorry,
And if you want to stay around, they will be here to answer more questions. And also make sure that you sign in and pick up some materials.
okay.
Can I just ask quickly, because it's about, I thought you had said if you find lead on the private side, you would replace it right away?
Mhm.
So if you find that, and is that replacement done at the owner's expense, or the city will replace that?
I believe we have to do that as a requirement since we touched the line.
We will do it.
Okay, thank
I
you.
don't, we have never experienced
Yeah, we've never seen it,
Yes.
if we would.
Between the two of us, it will go away at
Yeah.
our
Last question,
Hmm.
earlier in the discussion, you said at the end, we could have a discussion about the way the project has been managed. So now we're at the end.
And that's what I wanted to do, is kind of conclusion on this, to follow up on the project. We follow the same protocol that we've had on similar projects before, on notices and putting, notices, letters and stuff out. We've learned a lot of lessons on this one. We need to do a better job of knocking on doors and get notices out, so people who are sleeping during the day or nighttime, issues, know when we're gonna shut down the water line. We think we need to put out more information earlier. We found on this that we needed to get out earlier because this was a hot spot, especially with these lead lines. One of the other things we're going to do with projects is make sure we have a weekly update on the website. So you get a little more information, okay, where are we moving to, what's going on? Because this project changed as we went along. The plan was to finish everything on the south side before you touch the north side. Well, we couldn't finish everything on the south side once we got into it because there was conflicts with the old water line. So we had to jump and do some work on the north side. Now we're going back to the south side. So we can't give a work schedule right up front on the whole project, but it never works that way. We try. We've been fortunate on this project not to have a lot of issues we've had on other projects. The Fairview project last year, we hit the gas line 2 times up there, the contractor did. We shut down into the school a couple of times. We had water lines that we had a lot of things like that happen. Fortunately for this project, and you may not feel the same way, it went pretty smooth in that respect. As for staying on schedule, we had a dry summer, things moving along. There's not gonna be a problem with this finishing on time. But we did learn a lot of lessons, and we will be doing a better job of communication. We found that we do need to put a lot more information out there and put it out earlier. And we've had that discussion. We sat down and talked about this. Christy helps us with getting stuff on the website. We're gonna work closely with Christy to get more information out, even on the finishing of this project and along with any future projects. So, I hope that helps. That, we learned some lessons there. We did not do everything right. We could have did a better job. But we followed procedures that were perfectly fine in the past, and this was a unique project with the lead hitting, at this time, so.
Why do you think it didn't go so smoothly this time?
Say it again?
Why do you think it didn't go so smoothly this time?
Because of the lead issue and people we tried to make it clear, you weren't required to replace your lead line by this time. I think a lot of people thought that they had to, hurry up and replace their service line before we did the lead line. I think there was some misinformation there, or understanding on how.
I think saying it was recommended.
Twice.
What's
In
that?
first, the
Saying that it was
first letter and second
recommended.
letter.
Well,
We
it
do
is,
not-
it still is recommended. I mean, we're not requiring you to do it, so it's definitely recommended. Forget the lead part of it. Your galvanized lines are way past their useful life. We recommend replacing them, period.
Yeah, so we should have known that at the beginning of the project,
So-
that was gonna be part of it.
And I believe that too. Anytime we're dealing with these old galvanized lines, that's
So
something
will
we need to
there
put out there. We discussed the lead line stuff early on in the public meeting, but I don't even think there was that many people here for the public meeting originally in the very beginning of the project, so very few people got that information.
So will there be any work at 2 in the morning?
To finish this project, I don't see any reason for that at this point. No, we've already done the water line hookups and everything, so there should be no late night work at this point unless something goes wrong, something breaks. We don't, hopefully not.
Then you'll let everybody know.
And then we'll do our best to let people know.
Yeah, not just if your lines has to be fixed, because at 2 in the morning, the trucks are gonna wake up everybody, not just the line that they have
Right.
to work on. That's what you have to realize.
We do have emergency water breaks around, things happen in town.
Sure.
Don't necessarily can do that, but in this case, we should.
Emergency, I understand.
Yeah.
We all understand emergencies.
We were a little proactive when I got some prices. 2 of the plumbers from your list, both were concerned about running into the sanitary sewer line.
Mhm. The lateral. Or the main.
Sanitary sewer lateral?
Well, all sanitary sewer lines go out to the alley.
Yes,
Yeah.
they need more.
And I said, oh, it goes out the alley. Well, where? I said, on the east side of the house, the back of the basement. Goes out to the back.
Mhm.
For sanitary sewer, so, it's in the older part of the city. They had to see it for themselves. I
Yeah.
looked at this guy and I said,
What?
Some guys are
You're out
proactive.
here.
Yeah, some guys would be
There's sewer
proactive, come in
back
and look
over
at our
here.
sewer drawings, and we could tell them that up front. Some are better than others, so.
Is there any consideration for helping monetarily for the price of replacing these lines that we did not cause? That's a big chunk of money.
Well, so the line is owned by you currently,
Yes.
and it is at the end of its useful life, to kind of speak to what Daryl was saying. If it breaks and you have insurance, the line that you own should be able to withstand normal pressure and normal usage.
But that's if you have insurance. I'm
Right.
concerned.
Even without
if-
insurance, as a homeowner, your line should be able to withstand normal pressure and normal usage. If you know, to the conversation we had earlier about how do you know that it's broken? I live in an area that has lots of plastic lines in it. Their normal lifespan's about 40 years. Our homes were built 40 years ago. They break constantly. I walk around my neighborhood at night. I see small pieces in people's yards. You know, they're at the end of their normal lifespan regardless of whether or not they've been rehooked up to a new project or not. Just connecting to a new line, obviously there's a risk because, you know, we're doing some sort of work there, but it's not an abnormal risk. They're not making higher pressure, they're not changing anything with these lines. It is a line owned by you. If it breaks currently, what I would tell you to do if you can't afford to replace it, so if you don't have insurance, or maybe you're on a fixed income, there is a break notice that you'll get that says it's broken, and we call it a tag, it's a yellow tag that would come, and it actually comes from the city of Columbus. We have a pilot program currently that's in place that might be able to assist you. We may have to vet a few things with you to make sure that we can, but please reach out to us and we'll see what we can do if it breaks.
Is that the one you referred to about next March?
No, it's actively happening. It's part of another project that we're doing with, with the Department of Development in the city of Columbus. There's a grant that has to be spent in Columbus, but then we have some additional dollars that we've set aside in this interim period if people's line breaks and they need assistance. So we do have some extra funding there to try to help. It's limited funding, so I have to kind of vet who goes through this program, but if you are struggling,
Would that be that number there then?
that would be that number there, that's correct. Now, if you have insurance, we're gonna ask you to check your insurance first, because it's limited funding, and I wanna make sure that we can help as many people as we can.
Would the LEAP program help them too if they wanted to finance it? It's starting in March.
So the LEAP program's not starting until March, so if it breaks today, I can't offer you LEAP until March. If you don't replace it today, and you want to replace it in the future proactively, you're like, hey, it's been brought to my attention, my line is 80 years old, you know, it's really on its last leg and I want to get rid of it sooner rather than later. The LEAP program is also available to you starting in March, and it's no upfront cost to you. It is a secondary mortgage, but that mortgage is no interest, 99 years, and only is due if any cash out happens with the house. So if you sell the home, or if you transfer it with a cash out somewhere. So it's basically a free loan until you sell your home. So no upfront cost. And there's no income for that either, too. No income limit or anything like that. That should be open to everyone.
If you do have additional questions, feel free to go up and ask them, but make sure you sign in and there's some more information. And we have updated the Growing Together page, so please take a look at it. It has all the letters that were delivered to your house if you would like to see copies of those. And it's also got all the construction dates on there.
Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for coming.
Sir, in a second. I was going to talk to you here.
Okay, for what it's worth. I don't expect a professional opinion, okay?
I have one too.
Great.
In one hand, it sounds like it's covered. On the other hand,
That's what it does. Hi, how are you? These are
wear a chair, rusty perusing. I got it, look this.
Number two.
It's not just, no.
One, two.
That's right. So